The 26th of February, 1943. Auschwitz-Birkenau, German-occupied Poland. The first transport of Roma prisoners arrives at the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp. Exhausted after days without food or water, men, women, and children are forced into a newly created section, later known as the Gypsy Family Camp. In the months ahead, more than 23,000 Roma from across Europe will be deported there. They will face starvation, disease, medical experiments, and brutal treatment. At least 19,000 will perish, while only a few thousand are transferred elsewhere. In this place of horror, entire families are destroyed. Yet on the 16th of May 1944, against all odds, the Roma rise in open defiance, standing unarmed before the SS, prepare to fight to the death, rather than be led quietly to the gas chambers. This day will go down in history as the Roma Resistance Day. On the 30th of January 1933, when the Nazis came to power, they already considered the Sinti and Roma racially alien and asocial. Using pseudoscience from the Institute for Racial Hygiene, the regime labeled them as inferior and incapable of assimilation. Roma families were forced to register, undergo racial examinations, and faced restrictions on movement. In 1935, the Nuremberg Race Laws confirmed their exclusion. Roma and Sinti people, like Jews, were declared racially alien and stripped of their citizenship. Persecution escalated even before the war. In 1936, the Nazi authorities created the so-called Central Office to combat the Gypsy nuisance, which coordinated police harassment and surveillance. Many Roma people were sterilized by force, banned from schools and workplaces, and pushed to the margins of society. By the time the Second World War broke out on the 1st of September 1939, entire families were already marked as outcasts. As the war expanded, the persecution turned into genocide. Thousands of Roma were rounded up in Germany and Austria and deported to occupied Poland. Many were confined to ghettos, including the one in the city of Łódź, where over 5,000 Roma people were imprisoned before most were murdered at the Chelmno extermination camp. Others were shot by Einsatzgruppen, which were Nazi mobile death squads that followed the German army into the Soviet Union. By late 1942, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, ordered the deportation of all remaining Roma people in the Reich to Auschwitz-Birkenau. From February 1943 until the summer of 1944, more than 23,000 Roma people were sent to Auschwitz. About 21,000 were officially registered, while at least 1,700 were murdered immediately upon arrival without entering the records. Families were not separated, unlike Jewish transports. Men, women, and children remained together in a designated section of Birkenau known as the Gypsy Family Camp. A series of camp numbers, prefaced with the letter Z, was given to them and tattooed on their left forearms. They wore civilian clothing, but black triangles marked them as asocial. At first, the camp section was unfinished. Prisoners were forced to build their own barracks with crude materials. Sanitary conditions were disastrous. Latrines had no running water or privacy, and food rations were so foul that many vomited or developed diarrhea. Women guarded rags to use during menstruation, while children lived covered in filth. Prisoners sometimes had to sleep 5 or 6 to a bunk, while lice and vermin spread uncontrollably. Overcrowding was severe, especially after more than 12,000 arrivals in March 1943. By July, the population peaked at 23,000. Disease spread rapidly. Lice and typhus plagued the camp, while dysentery and starvation claimed thousands. A terrifying new illness appeared among children and young people, Noma, or water cancer, which rotted away their faces. Beatings and killings were constant. guards struck down prisoners who collapsed from exhaustion or disobeyed the smallest order. From their barracks, Roma prisoners could see the selection ramp where Jewish transports were sent to the gas chambers, leaving them in constant terror that they would be next. Survivors later recalled the despair. One of them, Hugo Hellenreiner, said, "We prayed. I am Roman Catholic, but we saw that it was of no use. I had seen my grandfather die there, my uncles, my aunts, and I thought to myself, where is the Lord God? Where is he?" Another prisoner remembered, "Small children were beaten to death with the butt of a gun. Babies, everyone. This I saw with my own eyes." Medical experiments added another layer of horror. From May 1943 to August 1944, Josef Mengele served as chief physician of the Gypsy Family Camp. He carried out anthropological studies on the Roma and twins for the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, using prisoners as test subjects. Those with heterochromia, different-colored eyes, were killed so their eyes could be preserved as samples. Children were placed in a special kindergarten, shown to visiting SS officers as propaganda. At first, they received slightly better food, but many were taken away for Mengele's experiments. Some children endured injections, surgical procedures, or repeated measurements that often ended in death. In addition to medical abuse, the Roma were exploited as forced labor. Some men worked on camp construction or repair, others were transferred into factories within the Reich. Prisoners too sick or weak were often selected and gassed. In May 1943, fearing a typhus outbreak, the SS sent nearly 1,000 Roma, mostly from the Polish city of Białystok and Austria, directly to the gas chambers. The same fate befell groups of children, including 39 taken from the town of Mulfingen in Germany, deported after racial testing by Nazi scientists. Families tried to cope with the misery as best they could. Some had musical instruments, and Roma songs sometimes echoed in the barracks. For brief moments, music gave them strength, even as hunger, disease, and death closed in from every side. By the spring of 1944, the Nazis prepared for the arrival of more than 400,000 Hungarian Jews. To make space, Auschwitz commandant Rudolf Höss ordered the liquidation of the Gypsy Family Camp. The first warning came when Russian Roma were suddenly removed. Prisoners heard the screams and barking dogs as families were forced onto trucks. Soon after, flames rose from the crematorium chimneys, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Survivors understood what had happened. The Russians had been murdered. On the 15th of May, 1944, SS Unterscharführer Georg Bonnegut informed block leaders that all Roma prisoners would be rounded up and killed. That evening, prisoners held a desperate meeting. One recalled, "Everyone thought, fine, if they want to take us out of here, then we'll sell our lives as dearly as possible. We won't just sit there for the taking." They armed themselves with whatever they could find, such as shovels, hammers, pickaxes, and planks of wood, and prepared to resist. The next day, SS officers and guards surrounded the camp with dogs and machine guns. SS Obersturmführer Johann Schwarzhuber led the men from barracks to barracks, banging on the doors. Inside, the Roma refused to move. Lights went on across the camp, even in the Polish and Jewish barracks. All of Birkenau was awake, watching. Confronted with unexpected resistance, the SS retreated. For the first time, the prisoners had stopped a Nazi liquidation. This act of defiance became known as the Romani uprising of the 16th of May, 1944. In the weeks that followed, selections took place. Over 1,500 young and able-bodied Roma people were transferred to other camps for forced labor. Another 1,400 were sent away in August. Left behind were about 2,900 prisoners, mostly children, women, and the elderly. On the night of the 2nd of August, 1944, SS units returned in full force. Armed with rifles, machine guns, and dogs, they stormed the Gypsy Family Camp. Prisoners screamed, hid, and battled with the SS with improvised weapons. But this time, resistance was futile. After a night of chaos, the survivors were herded into the gas chambers. Nearly 3,000 men, women, and children were murdered in a single night. Among the most tragic figures was Helena Hannemann, a German woman imprisoned with her Romani husband and their 5 children. She had worked as a nurse in the camp kindergarten and sometimes clashed with Mengele about the treatment of children. She supposedly obtained a personal promise from Mengele that she and her 5 children would be spared. In the end, she was not. On the night of the 2nd of August, the SS offered her a choice. She could leave the camp and save herself, but only if she abandoned her children. Helena refused. She held her children close as they were taken to the gas chamber, choosing to die with them. By the time the camp was liquidated, over 19,300 of the nearly 23,000 Roma people deported to Auschwitz had perished. Most succumbed to hunger, disease, and medical experiments. Thousands more were murdered in the gas chambers during selections and the final destruction of the camp. Survivors carried deep scars. Some lost their entire families. Others were haunted by the memory of watching children or siblings murdered before their eyes. Many spoke of losing faith in God or in humanity itself. Yet their testimonies remain crucial reminders of what happened. Though many of those responsible for the Romani genocide never faced trial, in some cases, justice or even revenge eventually caught up with the perpetrators. SS Obersturmbannführer Rudolf Höss, the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp complex from the 4th of May 1940 to November 1943, and again from the 8th of May 1944 to the 18th of January 1945, was tried by the Polish Supreme National Tribunal and executed at Auschwitz in front of former camp prisoners on the 16th of April 1947. Josef Kramer, a Hauptsturmführer in the SS and commandant of Auschwitz-Birkenau from the 8th of May to the 25th of November 1944, was tried during the Belsen trial and executed on the 13th of December 1945. Johann Schwarzhuber, an SS Obersturmführer responsible for the selection process at Auschwitz-Birkenau, was tried during the first Ravensbrück trial and executed on the 3rd of May 1947. SS Rottenführer Paul Goetze, who served as Blockführer or block leader in the Gypsy Family Camp in Birkenau and took part in its liquidation, was tried by the Polish Supreme National Tribunal and executed in Krakow on the 24th of January 1948. The genocide of the Roma and Sinti people, often overshadowed by the Holocaust of the Jews, claimed at least 250,000 lives across Europe. At Auschwitz-Birkenau, the Gypsy Family Camp stood as the epicenter of their suffering. After the war, this tragedy was often ignored in trials and public commemoration. For decades, the Roma genocide remained on the margins of memory, only gradually being recognized as part of the Holocaust. On the 2nd of August, the day of the camp's destruction, Roma communities worldwide now gather to remember the victims. It is marked as the Roma Genocide Remembrance Day. On the 16th of May, the date of the uprising, they commemorate the Roma Resistance Day. These days honor both the tragedy and the defiance of the Roma prisoners at Auschwitz-Birkenau. People who, even in the face of certain death, chose to resist with courage rather than submit in silence.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.